Alright, we're going to continue with solving equations. I call these the big scary kind. So I've broken up this section into 3 smaller chunks just so we can try and work on some of the skills. You'll notice there's a lot of overlap. So by the end of today though, I should be able to solve equations that require more than 2 steps to actually come up with an answer. But we'll start it with something a little nicer, a little friendlier, just to get our brains warmed up. So this is a 2-step problem. So I'm going to attack this with SAMDEB, the usual guide we use. So I want to go after the adding of 7, so I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, and I'm left with 4x, these guys will cancel, equals negative 35. And yes, it is possible to have not friendly, not perfect numbers, so let's just get over that. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is divide by 4, so I will divide both sides by 4, and then x is equal to negative 35 fourths. And that's a totally acceptable answer. It's in lowest terms, it doesn't go any smaller. If we wanted to, we could maybe write it as a mixed number, so there would be 8 groups of 4 that fit inside of 35, and I would have 3 left over. Okay, now this one again we can use a distributive property for these ones. I'll do them the 2 different models we've looked at. So one model is to actually do the distribution like such. So if I do that, I end up with negative 3x, and I want to make sure I watch the signs here, equals negative 15. So now I've taken care of the distribution. Now I want to go after back to SAMDEB rules, so I'm going to go after the plus 12. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Those will cancel. I'm left with negative 3x equals negative 27. Okay, so from there I want to go back after that. Now you got to be careful in this one. A lot of people do this with adding. This is not an adding case. This negative 3 is multiplied on the x. So that is a dividing by negative 3. So make a little star beside that one. That's an important one that people make a lot of silly mistakes on. These cancel for 1, and I'm left with x equals, now a negative divided negative, that will leave me with a positive answer. And how many 3's fit inside of 27? 9 of them. So my answer here should be positive 9. Now if I come over and I approach this the second method, which was to go after the negative 3 without distributing, then I would divide both sides by negative 3. These would cancel, and I'm left with x minus 4 equals positive 5. And now I'll go back to my SAMDEB. I want to get rid of this subtracting of 4, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. These would cancel, and x is equal to 9. Okay, and again, no surprise, I got the exact same answer. Okay, now this is one of those ones that catches people a little bit by surprise. The strategy is no different, it just looks different. So it's a bit of a visual intimidation or visually shocking to some people. The goal is, again, to try and get that x by itself. So when I look at this problem, I think of that dividing by negative 2 is my first problem I want to deal with. So to do that, I am going to multiply both sides by negative 2. Okay, and this comes from a good understanding of what my intention is. So when I multiply both sides by negative 2, that allows me to cancel out that denominator, and now suddenly that x minus 3 is free. Okay, and then on the right hand side I have negative 16. Okay, so then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That will cancel the negative 3 or subtracting of 3. Those will cancel, and I'm left with x equals negative 13. Okay, so don't let the question visually push you around. Stick to your strategies, and you'll be surprised how well they work. Okay, this one I put on line paper just so you can kind of see how this should flow down a page. I'm going to do this one with distribution, so I'm going to distribute the 2 to both. The 5 is going to go to both of those 2 terms. So my next line should look like this. And I'm doing my best to stay close to the lines. It's tough with this marker, but not doing too bad. Okay, and you'll notice I'm trying to align my equal signs, so as I go down the page, everything's going to look really neat and tidy. I want to add 14 to both sides. Again, it doesn't matter whether I go after the x's, the whole numbers, or anything first. I just want to keep track of it all. So 6x, those 14s are canceled. There's my equal signs. 5x plus 24. Now I'm going to go after the 5x. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. Those guys cancel. And in a wonderful, oops, I better finish that x there. And in a wonderful moment of serendipity, 6x minus 5x is just 1x. So I'm left with what I wanted. And a 24. Okay, so key things you might notice is, hey, look, all of those equal signs are aligned. It helps keep my work organized. I should be able to read down the page and read up the page with complete understanding. If you can do that, you've got excellent bookwork. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of work with creating equations from words. This can be tricky for some people, but once you see how it sort of works, it's not too bad. Twice a number, less 3 is 13. So there are a couple of key words here. Twice normally is a way of saying we're going to multiply by 2. A number is some variable. I don't know what it is. Okay, less 3. So the less becomes the subtraction, and 3 is just its number. Is generally is an equal sign in math. So when you see is, that's a lot of the times that leads to equal. And then we have created our new equation. So 2n minus 3 equals 13. And now that I have a lovely equation, okay, so I'm just going to draw a few arrows here. Now I can solve this. So I will go back to my SAMDEB. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Those cancel. 2n equals 16, divide both sides by 2, and I'm left with n equals 8. All right, let's try another one. So the sum of 3 consecutive numbers is 36. Now this is a really interesting statement because it just means 3 numbers in a row, and there's a whole bunch of ways to try and solve this. The first way that I'll set up is something like this. There's x. The next number that follows x would be x plus 1. So that could be 2 plus 3. And then the next value, if we want 3 consecutive numbers, could look like that. And it is, there's the is, my equal sign, 36. Now this isn't the only way to set up this problem. This is just one way. I'll try and show one of those later. But for now, let's just solve this one. Now this is adding of like terms, so none of my exponents are going to change. So I'll repeat, with adding, none of the exponents are going to change. So I have 3 x's plus 3 on the left hand side, and now I have a nice little equation. Okay, so now I can go back to SAMDEB, subtract 3 from both sides, those cancel. I'm left with 3x equals 33, divide both sides by 3, and I should end up with x equals 11. So what does that mean? Well, that means my 3 consecutive numbers are 11, 12, and 13. And if you check those out real quickly, 13 plus 12 is 25, plus 11 more is 36. Okay, let's tie in some perimeter with this question. So reminder, perimeter is the distance around the outside of a shape. It's an adding case. It's not multiplying. Perimeter, we have to remember, is add. We're going to add up all of the outsides. So the little ticks are important. I always find it really helpful. If these are both single ticks on those sides, that means they're the same length. So I like adding in all of my expressions. And the reason I do that is because it reminds me there are 4 sides, not 2. So if I want to add up all of those sides, I'm going to have 2x plus 3x plus 5 plus 2x plus 3x plus 5. Okay, and all of that equals my perimeter. Okay, but I've been given a little bit more information. I've been told the perimeter of the rectangle is 120 centimeters. So before I do anything with that, I'm going to clean up this expression because that's just way too much to have going across the page. And again, this is adding, so none of my exponents are going to change. So I have like terms here, 2x, 3x, 2x, and 3x. So that's a grand total of 10x. Okay, then I have plus 5, so there's another 10. Okay, and all of that is my perimeter. Now I'm told This is the perimeter is 120 centimeters, so I'm going to set P equal to 120 centimeters. So this becomes 10x plus 10 equals 120. Okay, I better give myself a little more room here. Come on, there we are. Okay, so now I want to solve this just like I've been solving all my other equations. So I'm going to use some SAMDEB as a guide. Get rid of my 10s. 10x equals, is that 110? Then I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And I end up with x equals 11. Okay, so the question, if I scroll back up, asks what is the value of x? I've found that. If x is equal to 11, if the question asked, I could go around and I could find all of the missing sides. So if x equals 11, this side would be a 22, and this side would be 33 plus 5, or 38. I could use that x value to find the dimensions. Okay, that's it for today. So if you could try a couple of questions. Some of these are a little tricky. Don't be shy in trying them, but they are a little bit of a brain push, so that's okay. That's what we're here for. Thanks again for watching.